Basement, level vibes with another one, straight up, blackness aye. Who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, I do it for the love, him not do it for no money. Straight up, him attack, educating everybody. Big up my friends and big up my family. Turn on the radio, catch the vibes, it's integrity. Straight up, Benskop stands for unity. One people, one nation, one destiny. Free up the truth in the air, even the blind can see. The deaf can hear, the dumb can talk, the cripple can walk. Boom. Who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, we have to gather wrong, grab a seat and sit down, pay attention. Education, liberation, we have to stand strong. Benskop upon the radio, lively up the program. Everybody call somebody and let them turn and tune and on the radio and catch the boom song. We boom it up already, we have to boom it up again. Expose and reveal him. Who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, I do it for the love, him not do it for no money. Straight up, him attack, educating everybody. Big up my friends and big up my family. Turn on the radio, catch the vibes, it's integrity. Straight up, Benskop stands for unity. One people, one nation, one destiny. Free up the truth in the air, even the blind can see. The deaf can hear, the dumb can talk, the cripple can walk. Boom. Who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop, straight up from the root. Mark Benskop, who tell the truth? Mark Benskop, defend the ghetto youth. Mark Benskop, radio station is the fruit. Mark Benskop.
Hello, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, The phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
Yeah, my name is Jacinti Caldata Francis Vietnam, and since 1965 I become a voter, and I always place my ex next to the cup, and what they are doing today, I can't take it. So I have no more vote to give to PPP anymore. I'm not going to vote anymore no more. If they have to lose by one vote, they're losing it by data.
All right, good evening. Let's get ready to rock and roll right here on 107.1 FM. My name is Mark Benshot. Coming up in just a few minutes' time, we'll have the former U.S. Ambassador to Guyana, Mr. Holloway, Perry Holloway. He is going to be with us in just about maybe under 5 minutes right here on 107. Share the link. Lots of information, lots of things. We'll just get to the source of information, that is, as to the life of a U.S. ambassador in Guyana. What do they do on a daily basis and so forth? And I'll be looking at some of your comments as well. And you know how we keep it here on 107.1 FM, straight to the point and very respectful. Good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for sharing the link. Those of you who have already shared the link, those who haven't shared the link as yet, interesting that you haven't shared the link as yet, right? All right, but hey, guess what's happening? Hey, the big story, the big story. Let me see how many of you guys recognize this guy. Yes, he was a security guard just the other day, a security guard to, look, it doesn't matter what sort of job you do, whether you're a janitor. I don't know how many of you guys know Les Brown. Les Brown started off as just a janitor and so forth at a radio station. He'll tell you his story, read his book. But this guy is security guard. Some of you may have passed him. Look at a security guard. But look at life. Look at life, right? Look at this guy. 7 wickets for 68 runs. Those of you, I haven't followed cricket in a while. Long time ago when... and I don't want you guys to know my era, right? But it's nothing to hide about that. Viv Richards, Desmond Haynes, when Viv Richards and Desmond Haynes would open the batting, is it? And then they had Gus Logie in the wicket. Then they had Viv, you guys know the other, Malcolm Marshall, right? As Joel Garner comes in from the northern end. And hey, I used to love cricket, but something happened to cricket after a while, right? That people didn't want. I mean, we took some beatings out of beatings. And for 27 years, there was this drought. And Australia took advantage of the West Indies, man. They just beat until they got tired of beating. And so it couldn't. One guy from up the Berbice River, an area of Baracara. And, you know, lots of people are now learning about that area of Baracara. And so you're going to hear a lot about that. But congratulations to the local hero, Mr. Shamar Joseph. Congratulations to this young man. All of us should be proud. Every single one of us. Good evening to you, Ambassador Holloway. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. Just here in Florida, enjoying listening to your show, and happy to be talking to people in Guyana once again.
All right. I'm glad that you're here. Took time out of your busy schedule to sit with us this evening to talk. And I'm sure while you were in Guyana, you followed a little bit of cricket. And I'm also certain that you heard about this good news, at least for West Indies.
Yes, I did. I did hear about the good news. It was actually on CNN and other international news shows. So I saw it there. I did go to a few cricket matches in my time in Guyana, and certainly heard the Guyanese very passionately, regularly talk about their opinions on cricket. I don't profess to fully understand it, but it is an interesting sport. And I was fascinated to learn later that, you know, we have some U.S. teams in the United States, and like our senior U.S. team is mainly made up of people from the Guyanese diaspora. So and it's largely played up in the New York area. But it is definitely when people ask me what are Guyanese passionate about, I say cricket.
Cricket indeed. And during your time in Guyana, Mr. Ambassador, come on, didn't you attend at least one game?
I think I attended 2 or 3, at least 2, and I think 3.
All right, absolutely. We have the former U.S. ambassador to Guyana, Mr. Perry Holloway. He is with us this evening as we move away from cricket. Let me just, first of all, give us a brief rundown behind this person, Perry Holloway. I know as a little boy growing up, where is it? You went to school out in Savannah,
South
Georgia?
Carolina.
Yep, South Carolina. I guess you're familiar with places like Waldoboro and so forth.
Yes, I've been to Walterboro. South Carolina, very rural state. And I was educated there, both at the primary, the secondary, and the university level. Shortly after getting a master's degree, I went into the U.S. Foreign Service, or the U.S. Diplomatic Corps, did 30 years. Most of that time has been in Latin America and the Caribbean, except for 1 year in Afghanistan. In fact, my last tour in the U.S. Diplomatic Corps was as U.S. Ambassador to Guyana. I retired in December 2018.
All right. Sometime back in Walterboro, I'm sure we probably may have run into each other. I spent some time in Walterboro as well. Beautiful place in South Carolina. But moving away from that, though, tell us, what was it like between 2013 to 2014? You were there in Afghanistan. What was that experience like for you, sir?
Well, it was definitely an interesting experience. It was sort of at the peak of our effort to try to help the Afghans, consolidate and advance their democracy. It was sometimes frustrating because the needs were legion. I mean, in other words, I mainly worked on political military affairs, so things dealing with the military and the police and the security forces. And in spite of us giving billions and billions of dollars, there's hundreds of billions of dollars. The needs were just legendary for what they needed to be able to have an army that could stand up to the threat that they were facing. One of the things I like to jokingly say to people is I was, in theory, the liaison sort of between the U.S. Armed Forces and the Afghan Armed Forces. And sometimes I'm not sure which was more difficult to deal with. But,
absolutely. Let us go to Guyana now, because I know prior to you officially touching down in Guyana, as we would say, it took a while before you were actually confirmed. Were you running out of patience?
Well, it was a year in confirmation purgatory is how I like to describe it. And there was a fight between Republican senators primarily and President Obama at the time. And these senators thought they were somehow punishing President Obama by holding up ambassadors like me, though, while I'm sure President Obama was definitely concerned about the issue, he didn't know who I was from Adam. And so I don't know how concerned he was on individuals. But I will tell you the one good thing about being in confirmation purgatory for 1 year, I literally read everything that was available about Guyana, its history, its culture. Not to say that I remember everything, because I even then I had an aging brain, but it gave me the opportunity to arrive in Guyana in some ways better prepared than many ambassadors arrive to a given country.
Well, you certainly had some time to study that, as you've indicated. Let us know your experience, your first time touching down in Guyana, your first day. What was your impression, sir, as you drove from the airport all the way to Georgetown?
Well, as I said, I had read a lot and talked to a lot of people, but I was still struck in some ways at the lack of development compared to other countries on the continent, like Colombia or Ecuador. And so I was a little bit struck. And, while in Guyana, I have to say I did not see abject poverty. I'm not saying it doesn't exist in Guyana, but, when I arrived and all that, but there clearly were lots of needs in terms of infrastructure and needs of the people of Guyana. So it was a little surprising to me. But the other thing that struck me was just the warmth of the Guyanese people. Everyone was very friendly, very accommodating. My wife and I, thoroughly enjoyed meeting people, learning more about Guyana and sharing our experiences in other countries with them. But it was a little bit of a shock at first. I mean, Afghanistan was in much worse shape, but you do have to remember there was a time not long ago, 70s and 80s, where Afghanistan was Kabul was a very metropolitan city, very advanced. In fact, they used to claim in the 70s that Kabul was the Athens of Asia. So that was what struck me. Though I can tell you the one thing that also struck me was the energy and the growth and the movement forward my whole time there. I mean, literally on a month-to-month basis, you could see things changing, improving, and moving forward.
Absolutely. As you touched on there, you probably drove around Border Market, Stabroek Market, around Georgetown, other places. You didn't find it difficult to understand Guyanese when they talk?
Well, yeah, a little bit. The Creolese was a little difficult to get used to, and I think I got used to it very quickly. I will tell you also, believe it or not, in South Carolina, especially down near the coast, the English some people speak there is not that far off from Creolese. So I already had been exposed a little bit to it. But my wife sometimes struggled with it, but I was able to translate. But I can definitely say if my driver and bodyguard wanted to have a conversation about me and not have me understand it, they might be able to do it if they tried really hard. But over time, I did begin to understand the Creolese and get used to the Guyanese. In fact, now that I live in South Florida, there are a surprising number of Guyanese, and the people that I run into are always struck that I say, "You're from Guyana." They go, "How do you know that? Everyone thinks I'm from Jamaica or somewhere else." I say, "No, I recognize the accent."
Absolutely. Ambassador Holloway is with us this evening. He former U.S. ambassador to Guyana, and describe to us, because a lot of people in Guyana, they may see ambassadors and the vehicles, the diplomatic plates drive by and zoom, that's it, and they say, "Oh, that's the U.S. ambassador." Or they may stop by at some, maybe at the Marriott, maybe at the Oasis Cafe. It sounds familiar to you, right? The Oasis Cafe.
I've been to the Oasis many times.
Yeah. And they see and they say, "Oh, that's the U.S. ambassador." Describe to us, what's your day like as an ambassador while you were there, as you got up in the morning all the way to the afternoon? Describe that.
Well, I mean, normally when you get up in the morning, you first thing you want to do, and this is true, I think, for any U.S. ambassador in any country, you want to take a look at the local press, generally the printed press, but it might be the radio or the TV, depending on the country and the markets, just to sort of see what's going on. And you, being Guyanese, know as well as I do that each of the 4 leading print dailies had their own particular angle on issues, and I'll leave it at that. So you sort of had to read all 4 to be able to consolidate probably where the truth really was at some point. And then, that sort of set the parameters for your day, jokingly, but not really jokingly. One of the other things in this modern world where everything's connected, where radio now has video with it and all sorts of strange things, often you would have, when you got into the office and the embassy first thing, you would have to calm Washington down, because they too now can read the Guyanese press online, which they couldn't do, 15, 20, 30 years ago. And they would be going crazy, misinterpreting and thinking the sky is falling. So you would spend a lot of time managing Washington and convincing them, no, that's not really true. That's not the whole story. But then, you're responsible as U.S. ambassador for not only managing a relationship between the United States and the government of Guyana, but also managing all resources and people from the U.S. government in Guyana. So, you spent a lot of time meeting with government officials, other diplomats. I was also the U.S. ambassador to CARICOM, so I would spend a lot of time over at CARICOM visiting then Ambassador LaRocque at the time. So there are a lot of meetings. There are not as many fancy, wonderful cocktails as people think U.S. ambassadors go to, though there were a number of receptions on a regular basis during the week. But mainly it was just pushing U.S. interest. And normally your goal is, if you can push U.S. interest that at the same time is in the interest of Guyana, so in other words, a win-win situation, it becomes an easy issue to advance. But in the end, you are representing the United States. This issue, you have to help protect its companies, its citizens. So a lot of time is spent on that and just managing the embassy. I don't give exact numbers, but just on the order of magnitude, we were about 60 Americans in country at any given time and 160 Guyanese, let's just say, rough order of magnitude. So, anytime you got that many employees, there are certain issues you have to deal with and things you have to take care of. But mainly it was about managing the relationship between Guyana, seeing how we could help Guyana become an even more prosperous and inclusive democracy than it already was.
You know,
Because
one of the
go ahead.
no, go ahead, Mr.
No,
Ambassador.
because that's in the U.S. interest, quite frankly. I mean, whenever you live in a certain area, whether it be you and your neighborhood or you live in a part of the world, you want everyone around you to be prosperous and fully functional and inclusive and nice, quite frankly, to you and your way of thinking. Whether they 100% agree or not, that's not expected. And so, Guyana's success was in the U.S. government's best interest, in my opinion. That's the way I viewed it.
All right. So you did mention, of course, calming Washington down, and that's the purpose of an ambassador, really, because you guys are there on the ground to calm Washington down. You also mentioned American interest, so to speak. But what were the two main interests that you focused on locally there in Guyana while you were there that could benefit Guyanese?
Well, one of the things, and this may surprise people, is getting the government of Guyana to hold local elections after not having held them for many, many decades. In fact, when we talked about my confirmation purgatory of 1 year in Washington, and as I went back and historically reviewed all the meetings that, ambassadors had over the years and high-level officials had over the years, you're still there, right, Mark?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here with you. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was surprised to see that almost always one of the leading talking points from the 80s on was, when are you going to have local elections? Because I think the U.S. believes that if you want to have a real, fully functional democracy, it really begins with local elections, because your future leaders, your future presidents, your future members of parliament are created at the local level. So it was so important for us to see that happen. And I'm not saying I forced anybody to do it. I certainly didn't, but I certainly, like all the ambassadors that came before me, every time I met with anyone in the government who I thought it could make a difference with, pushed the concept of local elections. I was glad to see them occur. Credit to President Granger for having them. I was glad to see that the current government also had local elections, I guess last year, if I'm not mistaken. And I hope that the next ones are, happen on time, because it is just such an important part of democracy. So that was one of the more important things. I think the other important thing is, the whole issue dealing with the Venezuela border controversy, the 1899 arbitral award. Historically, the U.S. government's position had been, we urge both sides to resolve this peacefully. Well, that is certainly, I'm sure, still the U.S. government's position. But that was as far as we generally took it, because we didn't want to appear to be taking sides. But, and success has 1,000 mothers and failure is an orphan. So I might give myself more credit than due, but I certainly was one of the people pushing really hard on Washington, saying, look, if arbitration is truly a diplomatic tool that we tout as a way to resolve problems and issues, and we participated in the 1899 arbitration, actually representing Venezuela, I might add, then why aren't we going to say something like, both sides, we urge you to resolve this peacefully, and until either you decide differently or a competent legal body comes down with a different decision, everyone should recognize the 1899 arbitral award. And Washington did change their talking point and added that to their talking point. And I think I've seen them recently, and they're basically the same talking point. So I think getting Washington to change on that issue, because quite frankly, in my opinion, we were talking out of both sides of our mouth. We didn't want to say it because we didn't want to piss one side off, true. But at the same time, we knew that there were U.S. companies are operating out in the Essequibo region. Coke and Pepsi deliver their drinks out there. Caterpillar sells generators out there. And so are we saying that no one should do anything out there because it's disputed? No. Since 1899, most countries in the world, certainly in the region, except for a few, have recognized the arbitral award. And so I think that Guyana's approach now of having it go to the ICJ at the request of the Secretary General of the UN after 50 plus years after the Geneva Agreement did not produce a resolution is the right approach. I don't know what the court will decide, but I think Guyana has good prospects. And again, I think this is the right approach on how you should resolve this.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for because you were there during. I think it started in 2016 or so.
Yeah, I
2000.
mean, I think even in 14 the sabers were rattling, but it got worse in 16. Yeah, and we sort of changed or added that nuance to our policy in 2000, late 15, early 16.
Ambassador Perry Holloway is with us this evening, former U.S. Ambassador to Guyana. He's with us. We're talking. We're getting to some issues here. Were you surprised when Venezuela started to say, look, they're uncomfortable with this ICJ and they were started to reclaim part of Guyana? Were you surprised, sir?
No, I mean, again, being a close follower of Guyana and having had a year in purgatory to read everything, it was clear, that Venezuelans fervently believe that the Essequibo is theirs. There's no doubt. I mean, you can talk to Venezuelans who are from the opposition, and I mean, really, really opposed to President Maduro. They hate him, but they believe in one thing that he believes in, and that's the Essequibo is theirs. They do a very good job of educating their students from kindergarten on up that here is the lost state, it's theirs. So it didn't surprise me. It's also, quite frankly, it appears to be a way to distract from internal problems in Venezuela. So you'll notice the volume rises every time there seems to be some threat to Maduro from within or something like that. But so, again, it wasn't a big surprise to me. And I think Guyana has gotten used to the game as well. I'm glad to see that the two sides are meeting. It's funny being, neither side and just sitting here in Florida when you read, the foreign minister of Venezuela comes out of the meeting and the foreign minister of Guyana does. And it sounds like there were two different meetings when you hear their recounting of what happened. So each side is pushing what they should be pushing as they should do. But it is interesting. I mean, I think it is also good for the region that both sides clearly did commit to we want to keep this as a zone of peace. And violence is not the answer. So I think that is the single biggest thing coming out of recent conversations, in my opinion.
Thank you so much. Let's see some of the comments here. I noticed a particular comment from a Busman Golive, he said, I met Ambassador at Scotiabank a few years, talked to him. He was surprised I knew his name. And that's a Guyanese is saying that they met you there and you were surprised. Thank you so much, Busman, for that, or Bossman. Then Nicole Cole is saying, not a blade of grass. Nicole is actually talking about indictments, but I noticed you raised your hand. You wanted to say something, Ambassador?
No, go ahead. I'll follow you.
Yeah. So let's go picking up from where Nicole Cole mentioned their indictments. What about extradition? Explain to us extradition agreement between the U.S. and Guyana, please, sir.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm glad to hear that they haven't indicted me in Guyana. So that was what you were worrying me there for a moment.
Oh,
but we do have an extradition agreement with Guyana. There was a time for a brief period of time where the case it had been declared unconstitutional, but there were subsequent cases that resolved that unconstitutionality, and it is now possible to extradite Guyanese to the United States and U.S. people and Guyanese people in the United States back to Guyana. And in fact, during my time there, it was an issue I pushed very hard. And while I was there, I don't remember the case, but we did extradite at least one person to the United States.
That's Thomas.
Yeah, that sort of opened the spigot, I think. And we also extradited some people from the U.S. back to Guyana. So it's most countries have agreements with other countries for this because, quite frankly, if someone does a crime in your country, oftentimes you would like them to be punished in your country. There are different requirements. Each country has certain things they require. Many countries, part of their extradition agreement is you cannot have a death penalty. The U.S. doesn't have that. But what I'm saying is there are some countries we will not extradite our citizen to your country unless you say you will not implement the death penalty. But that's not. I think the one with Guyana just limits the worst. You cannot exceed whatever the worst punishment would be under the Guyanese judicial system.
There were two, Troy Thomas and another person that was actually extradited while you were U.S. ambassador. Yeah. And there was one guy who was wanted for murder. He was extradited back from the U.S. to Guyana. Question concerning extradition. Do you feel it's working at a level where it should be or more needs to be done?
Well, at least when I was there, I certainly thought more should be done. I haven't been following it in the last year or two to see how that is going. And that would be a question better for the new U.S. ambassador. But I mean, it is definitely a tool that I've seen used very effectively, especially in Colombia and to a lesser extent in Mexico, that can sometimes make a difference. And it's just, again, it's another tool in the arsenal for the government to use against the bad guys. Because quite frankly, some of the bad guys, and I'm not talking about some guy who just murders his wife, which is a horrible thing. But I mean, I'm talking about these kingpins, these high level people that do things and can buy a lot of protection. Sometimes extradition is the only thing that they fear.
You spent some time in Colombia there too as a diplomat. What was that experience like, sir?
Well, I like to say that I saw both all the good, the bad, and the ugly in Colombia. I served there in the 80s. I served there late 90s, early 2000s, and mid 2000s. So I did see Colombia, for instance, in the late 90s, early 2000s, was teetering on the precipice of becoming potentially a failed state and having armed militant groups, whether they be leftist guerrillas or right-wing paramilitary groups, take over the country and literally control vast swaths of the country. But through a lot of hard work and political will, mainly by the Colombians, but with assistance from friendly governments like the United States and others, they turned it around. And Colombia went from being the murder capital of the world, the kidnapping capital of the world, to, while they're not the safest place in the world today, they don't even register on the top 10 on either of those categories any longer. So it was interesting time to be there. I met my wife Rosaura there, so I'll always have a special place in my heart for Colombia because of that. And since I served there for about 10 years during 4 tours or 11 years, I probably learned more about the how diplomacy works there than anywhere else, just because I was there longer.
Absolutely. 33 minutes after 8 o'clock. If you're now joining us, we have former U.S. Ambassador to Guyana, Perry Holloway, is with us. You visited quite a few places around Guyana, and here is one, an Amerindian community. What was it like? Talk to us, please, about this visit.
Well, I mean, the children were just so nice, and you could tell they just wanted to learn and they wanted to have fun, which is what you want children to do. They were curious, they wanted to know more about the United States. And so that was, I'm trying to remember I've been to all 10 zones, by the way. So all 10 regions. So that might be what, in the Rupununi? I'm not sure.
Rupununi, yes.
Yes. And so a beautiful country, very pristine country. I tell people Guyana is one of the best preserved countries still left in the world. At least a few years ago, 80% of Guyana was largely untouched by human hands. So there's almost no other country can make that claim. So, and the fascinating people, the 6 peoples of Guyana, of course, and the indigenous or Amerindians are a key part of that heritage.
Indeed. Let's move back now to something you're familiar with. Police reform in Guyana. You seem to have been very, very huge on this particular issue. Did you leave somewhat satisfied that enough was done on your part for police reform?
I don't know if enough was done.
Sorry, you are with Ram Narayan, former acting commissioner of police here, handing over a laptop. Go ahead, sir.
I mean, I left thinking that I at least on the part of the United States, left things better than I found it, which I guess is all one can hope for. But, Guyana has a very, very small police force. And historically, no matter which government is in power, they are very, very underfunded. So, it's quite a challenge that they have in front of them when they don't have enough people or money to get the job done on a professional basis like they should. I was always struck by how many true professional policemen I would meet in spite of the odds they had going against them.
In spite of the odds they got going against them.
If you looked at the figures, I don't remember the figures now, but Guyana police per capita number is very, very low, near the bottom part of the list for the whole world, the number of police per capita. Same is true for Guyana's armed forces.
Absolutely. In 2007, as we just celebrated over in the U.S., the birth anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., back in 2017, you said, quote, "I encourage all Guyanese citizens and visitors like me who are fortunate to be here to honor King's memory today and throughout the year and commit to acts of service in the community. Do you think you see that a lot in Guyana? Dr. Martin Luther King's message about service and unity and togetherness?
Yeah, it's Guyana's sort of a two-faced coin. You do see it a lot, and but at the same time, when politics gets involved, sometimes that gets thrown out the window, and I'll leave it at that. To me, I met lots of Guyanese people of all the six peoples, and I never really thought that anyone was particularly racist. And I come from South Carolina. I know racist and racism when I see it, but it does seem that when politics gets involved, something that resembles racism, I call it more tribalism maybe, certainly rears its ugly head in Guyana. And this is true no matter which side is in power. I was just telling a business that I was talking with recently that, when the previous government was in power, the opposition, now current government, said, you must renegotiate the ExxonMobil contract. And now that what was then the opposition is now in power, the talking point of the opposition who were in power is the same talking point, even though, they both sides were opposed or for it, depending where they sat. So it's clearly an opposition-based system. It's a winner-take-all system, and I'm not sure that that's necessarily the best thing that Guyanese could hope for, but it's the system you got. And if you want to change it, then you have to work within the system. You have to have local elections, hold your politicians accountable, and hopefully over time, people can get whatever it is they think they want and deserve, as long as it's within reason and legal.
A lot of Guyanese have been talking, and they seem not to have much confidence in the way people vote, and they have been calling for biometrics. Do you think that's the way forward?
I will tell you, I observed the local elections, and I've observed elections all over the world. I think the Guyanese system is pretty darn secure, and the people from the Carter Center, who are literally the gold standard world experts on this, also believe so. Well, could biometrics speed things up, give you another layer of confidence? Yes, but I was very impressed. At the ballot box itself and the counting seemed pretty secure compared to many other countries that I've seen. But biometrics would not be a bad thing. I'm not against it if you can afford to do it.
Do it, indeed. All right. Some people might wonder when they see ambassadors sit and high commissioners sit and they have discussions. I noticed this particular photograph here. High Commissioner Greg there. And I believe it's the Canadian High Commissioner.
Yep, Pierre Giroux.
Yep. What do you guys discuss when you guys sit and talk?
Well, we certainly do discuss things about Guyana that are of mutual interest. It's always easier, for instance, if you are hoping to achieve something with a government, if there are other countries that are hoping to achieve the same thing. So you go in and either you grow in as a group, or at least when you go in individually, they're hearing the same message from many directions. Also, one of the things especially with Greg, who I was quite close to, we had a different set of, we shared context. We had a lot of similar context, but he also talked to people I didn't, and the same was true for me. So you could learn a lot from each other about that.
Learning a lot from each other about that 40 minutes after.
Yeah, and mainly, I think that we complained about our salaries.
Absolutely. Indeed. 40 minutes after 8 o'clock here. We got lots of messages. I'm reading some of your comments, guys. We want to touch on voting, Ambassador. You've traveled the world. You've stationed in quite a few countries. I want you to talk directly to our listeners here now about the importance of voting.
Well, voting is the only sure way that your voice is heard, without a doubt. There are other ways a voice can be heard in whatever political systems you're in, but voting is the for sure way for your vote to be heard. One of the things that I sometimes heard in Guyana, and I hear in the United States now, I don't like either candidate. I'm not going to vote. Well, unless you believe there's not going to be a president of your country, then you should definitely vote, even if it means voting for the lesser of two evils. Ideally, you'd like to have candidates, one that inspires you, one that causes passion. But A no vote is a voice not heard.
Indeed, voting. Let's just move away briefly. The American presidential elections is just quite a few months away, by November. What is your take as you watch the politics of the
Well,
U.S.?
it's a long time between now and November. It's 9 months, but the gloves have come off and the real heavy politicking is happening. Obviously, everyone believes it's going to be Biden and Trump again, and I share that belief. I mean, not to take anything away from Miss Haley, she might be able to pull a rabbit out of the hat, but I think it's a very deep hat, and her arm is probably not long enough to pull that rabbit out of that hat. But so I do think it's going to come down to those two people. And it's going to get, I think, ugly before it's going to be an ugly campaign, lots of mudslinging. And the U.S. campaign is always so long compared to most people. I know that when I talk to other diplomats, they're always, why are your campaigns so long? And it just chews up money. I mean, I talked to my brother in South Carolina recently, and right now there's going to be a Democratic primary and there's going to be a Republican primary in South Carolina, but on different dates. And so he is just being bombarded on the TV, the radio, his mailbox, yard signs. It's all the election stuff coming up. So what should you be watching for? I don't know. I mean, people say it regularly. We have two men who make me look like a young whippersnapper. So hopefully, I don't hope anything happens to either one of them, but their health is a concern to both people, both sides, I think. And if something were to happen to one or the other, then who would fill in behind them? That's a question no one can answer, and no one wants to have to answer. But that's something to be watching. The other thing that I think is important to watch, our system is something called the Electoral College, which is a really complicated system. I'd love to explain it to you, but I don't have 4 hours to do so. But what it boils down to is it means there's just a handful of states that really matter. I mean, I think I could predict the outcome in 44 of 50 states today, and I'd be willing to bet my life that I was right, and I would go to sleep very soundly. So really, there are only 6 states. There's Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. That's where the fight is going to be. And
What about Pennsylvania?
I said Pennsylvania. That was the first one I said.
Okay.
I think Pennsylvania is the most important one because of those 6 states, it's the one that has the most electoral votes.
Absolutely.
So they're going to spend a lot of time in those 6 states. There's no doubt about it.
Just to get your opinion on this whole big issue of immigration reform. We've been hearing this since the Reagan era. How much politicking you think our politicians in the USA play with immigration reform? It seems as though both parties, nobody really wants to get it done. That's just my opinion. Your take?
I mean, on any given year, one party or the other wants to get it done. But the trick is, how do you get both parties to agree to want to get it done in the same year? Yeah, you're right. Our immigration system is broken in almost every aspect. And, and I was sort of on the inside, so I saw some of the mechanics of it. I didn't work for immigration, but I did see a lot of it being on the inside of the U.S. government. And it hasn't been reformed in more than 2 decades in any significant fashion. It needs reforming. I think if you look at the polling, it's the number one issue on people's minds from both political parties. It's certainly number one on people who say they are Republicans. And even Democrats, it may not be their number one issue, but it's one of their top 3 or 4 issues. So it's an important issue. And, you've seen some of the video coming from the southern border. That's not what we want to see on our southern border. That's not the image we want to project. That's not the country we want to be. So how we solve that, I don't know, but you definitely need to reform the legislation is the first start.
All right. As we wind things down with the ambassador, Honorable Perry Holloway with us, we want to touch on something that I know you are fond of, coins. Talk a little bit about coins. You collected a couple of these out in Guyana?
Yeah, the only thing I've been doing longer than gaining weight is collecting coins. I've been collecting coins for about 55 years. And I don't profess to be an expert on Guyanese coinage, but I do have some knowledge. And yes, I have every one of those coins. And in fact, my goal is to have every single coin from Guyana's independence, at least one. And I'm only 2 or 3 coins away from achieving that goal, though there's probably one that's just out of reach and not achievable for me.
Which one that is? You mind saying?
Yeah, there was a commemorative coin, a $500 coin in 1994. So a commemorative coin is a coin made to commemorate an event. It's not one that gets spent on the streets. It's made for collectors and for souvenir-like things. And so it was celebrating the royal visit, 1994 royal visit to Guyana. And it's made of gold. It has almost 1.5 ounces of gold. So right there, just in gold, it's worth $3,000. And it has a numismatic value, meaning a coin collector value. So it's probably $4,000 or $5,000, which is a lot of money for me, a retired civil servant. But even if I'm willing to pay that, and I might, if anyone has one, reach out to Mark and let me know. But that's the problem. I have not been able to find one in 7 years of looking.
Let me ask you this, Barry, and I'll see how much you've learned spending those few years out in Guyana, and you love to collect coins. What's a bob?
A buck?
A bob. A bob.
Oh, Bob, I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
That's a quarter.
Oh, okay.
Way back, we called it, when we had the coins, we called it a bob. Hey, I get a bob there. Now, Mr. Ambassador, as we prepare to go now, you must when you walk in the Oasis or somewhere there, or you walk around Border Market, Stabroek Market, and the Guyanese say, "Hey, what's going on there, Mr. Ambassador? How things?" What would you respond? Let's hear a little bit of Guyanese twang there from you.
Well, I don't know if I can respond in Creolese, but I did understand what you said. I said, I'm doing fine, just enjoying the friendly Guyanese people.
Yeah, what's going on there?
And I did. I think I was, you'll have to check with your listenership, but I think I was known as the U.S. ambassador who got out quite a bit, did go to the markets, did go to the malls, walked around, went to the museums and all that stuff.
Yeah, you went all over indeed. Favorite dish, favorite foods?
I like pepper pot quite a bit. In fact, I had dinner with some Guyanese recently, and we had pepper pot, so that was good to, black cake is always good at Christmas. It's very similar to the rum cake I would have in South Carolina. A good roti. I would say I like a good goat curry, and I had some good ones, but I had some less than good goat curries in my time in Guyana as well.
I'm looking at some of the comments here. A lot of Guyanese seem to have missed your presence there as the U.S. ambassador. Almost all of them are agreeing with you that, yes, you were on the ground. We last met was in 2016, I think, right there at your office. Just to give you an update on this young scholar, Kelly Isles. She has since graduated from Harvard University. She is wrapping up with her PhD out University of California, I believe. She is doing pretty well. I'm sure she'd want me to give her regards to you.
Well, give her my regards. That's wonderful to hear that she's doing so well.
Yes. Your closing remarks, sir, as all these Guyanese, for some reason, the way people are just commenting and thanking you for being there on the ground for them as well, and for ensuring local government elections, you played your role. The first local government elections held in almost a little over 2 decades, and thank you so much for that. For some reason, I hope you're not preparing to run for president of Guyana, in next election.
No, but I used to joke as I was leaving. I said, I'm terrified that President Granger is going to make me the next head of GCOM. That was my nightmare position. But no, my message would be to Guyanese. First of all, my wife Rosado and I miss Guyana, miss the Guyanese. I continue to follow it very closely. I do advise some companies on doing business in Guyana and things like that. I hope to get back and visit maybe in the next 12 months. We'll see. And, remember, life is not always forward. It's regularly 2 steps forward and 1 step backward. And just be understanding of others. Any of you that are married or have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, know that you're never going to always see eye to eye to another person, but respect each other's opinions, look for common ground, and try to find solutions to go those 2 step forwards. And even more importantly, when you have to take that 1 step backward, how do you recover and keep moving forward? Because I think Guyana's future is bright. There is the oil continues to be discovered. I think if it's not this year, certainly early next year, the initial capital expenditure costs for the Stabroek Block and others will be paid off, and so the amount of money coming into Guyana's coffers will be greater than it's ever been. So there are lots of needs. There are infrastructure needs, schools, police, military, bridges, roads, hospitals. We could go on, but the government is certainly going to have the money to be able to help provide more of that to the Guyanese people. But it is not something that happens overnight.
Well said. Finally, I notice Raw Chalmers here, one of our listeners, is saying, coming from the South or coming from South Carolina, the ambassador should know who the world's best cooks are. We'll leave you with that.
Well, I would say they're from Charleston, South Carolina, but who knows? But
Charleston, South Carolina, indeed. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time, sir. Don't be a stranger. Hopefully we'll have you back before the November elections.
All right. My pleasure.
Thank you, sir. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. All right. That was straight to the point. I noticed some of your comments. I wasn't able to read them all. I noticed one or two distractions, the usual distractions, not paying attention, but the side gaff, right? Rhonda Lane, good evening. How are you? Dennis Atwell and Marlon Monroe, everyone. Sorry, Marlon, I'm now looking at your question. Marlon wanted to ask about discrimination and so forth. So Nicole Cole, all of you, every single one of you. Tony Hack seemed to be at it. Tony, good evening. Colin Barnwell, Eric Williams, and every single one of you. Vanetta, Rastaman, mischievous Francine Cruz. I say mischievous Francine Cruz. Anyways, all of you guys, good evening. Tomorrow night, guess who is going to be back with us? Tom Anderson. Tom Anderson is going to be with us tomorrow night, and followed by maybe a former British spy should be with us on Wednesday. But for now, my name is Mark Benchop. I hope you enjoy the show. Somebody's saying I don't shout them out as well. Candy Nalini, and all of you, Brenda, Braithwaite, Brenda, Casey. I can't call out all of the names, but please do. We appreciate you guys, every single one of you. But for now, again, we just thank the ambassador for taking time out of his busy schedule to be here with us this evening on 107.1 FM. All right. Until tomorrow, same place, same time. We're out of here. Thank you so much, Lemon. And to all of you, every single one of you, we really appreciate it from the bottom of our heart. And again, congratulations to Shamar Joseph. Congratulations, young man. Congratulations. Now, everybody in the regime just going to follow. They're going to talk about Shamar, where he's from, the little village that has been ignored. They never gave a rat's you-know-what about this young man, his village, or nothing. But suddenly, they all seem to care. We've got to watch when he arrives back in Guyana. Some who love to hand out pittances and so forth, they're going to run, they're going to embrace him, all manner of things. But you should also seek, any regime should seek to embrace even the smallest, even the littlest. And this guy, as a security guard, was ignored. And look, he's being hailed rightfully as a hero. So, Shamar Joseph, our hero. And there are lots of other heroes out there. But it's just that we don't pay attention to them. God bless you all. See you tomorrow, same place, same time, right here on 107.1 FM. So long.
Yeah, my name is Jacinty Caldata, Francis C. Vietnam, and since 1965, I become a voter. And I always place my ex next to the cup. And what they are doing today, I can't take it. So I have no more vote to give to PPP anymore. I'm not going to vote anymore on the moon. If they have to lose by one vote, they're losing it by data.
So, this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington law firm located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.